very warm welcome to all and heartiest greetings to all architects and designers on behalf of my team as we gather today to celebrate World Architecture Week. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome you all to today's webinar. CCCAM presents Celebrating Architecture, Evolution, Legacy and Future. It's heartwarming to see such a fabulous response to this webinar series brought to you by Architect and Interiors India. Thank you for taking time out and being here today. My name is Indrajit Sauji. I head the construction and design vertical for ITP in India, and I'll be your host today. Let me begin with a brief introduction about ITP. ITP Media Group is one of the largest foreign media companies in India. The group now publishes more than 100 weekly and monthly magazines and has a wide portfolio of market-leading digital properties. Some of our global titles include magazines like Harper's Bazaar, Vogue, Time Out, Cosmopolitan, Grazia, Construction Week, Architect and Interiors India, and more similar prominent titles across industry verticals. In India, we have 7 titles, including Architect and Interiors India. Architect and Interiors India is our flagship title and is amongst the most respected and widely read B2B titles in its domain. And as we gather today to celebrate World Architecture Week, this webinar is one of the ways we want to express our gratitude towards this profession of design. Today's topic being Celebrating Architecture, Evolution, Legacy and Future. I personally believe that apart from politics, architecture is the only profession that has the ability to change not only the lives of individuals, but families, societies, cities and countries at large. This is a profession that has the capacity to impact many generations, create history, define a skyline of a city, and impart it a character. From ancient pyramids to our very own Taj, to stepwells of Gujarat, to Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, to famous temples of South, to cave carvings of Ajanta and Ellora, to today's contemporary institutions, there are many examples. In this episode of the webinar, we are celebrating architecture in India by the way of in-depth discussion on its evolution over the years, the legacy architects are leaving behind for the next generation to take forward, and what future will entail. To deliberate, we have with us leading names in the field who will put forth their views on the practice and share their aspiration for the industry as a whole. We are looking forward to an interactive and engaging session and need your complete involvement. And to ensure this, we'll take a few live questions during the session. For those who want to ask live questions, you may do so by clicking the hand icon in the control panel. I repeat, you need to click the hand icon and my team will get in touch with you in case if you want to come live and ask a question. We'll also be running a Q&A at the end of this webinar. So we have enabled our ask a question feature. It's on the control panel at the bottom of your screen. So if you have any questions, just type it there. I promise we'll try to answer as many questions as possible. And if you miss anything, don't worry. We'll be sending around on-demand recording to your mailbox and it will soon be available on our website as well. Without any further delay, let me introduce our partner for today's session, Sisecam Flat Glass. Sisecam is a global player of the glass industry and has a production facility spanning across 10 countries, namely Turkey, Bulgaria, Romania, Germany, Slovakia, Hungary, Russia, Italy, Egypt, and India. Sisecam operates in 4 main product categories consisting of architectural, automotive, solar energy glass, and glass for home appliances. Sisecam Flat Glass aims at meeting all customer expectations in its target market. With its high-quality products, state-of-the-art technology, and its efforts focused on saving energy for environment protection. Thank you, Sisecam, for partnering with us and for helping us run this informative webinar series. Let me introduce my esteemed panel for today, beginning with Nandini Somaya Sampath, Director Somaya and Kalapa Consultant, Mr. Sangeet Sharma, Partner SD Sharma and Associates, Esra Aydınoglu, Architect and Architectural Glass Product Manager, SFG, Akshat Bhatt, Principal, architect discipline, Dipen Gada, principal designer, Dipen Gada and Associates. And we'll be soon be joined by Abha Narayan Lamba, principal architect, Abha Narayan Lamba and Associates. I am joined by my colleague, Mr. Vibhor Srivastav, Group Publishing Director, ITB Media Group. He'll be moderating today's session, and Mitali Kudekar, Editor, Architect in Interiors India. Now, before I hand it over to the moderator, I have an interesting video for you all. Rohan, can you just play the video, please? Interesting. To begin the celebration, let me hand it over to Esra. Over to you, Esra.
Hi, everybody. I would like to start by celebrating World Architecture Week of our panelists and also to the audience we are at the moment listening to us. Can you give me a second so that I will share my screen with you? Created by International Union of Architects in 1985, World Architecture Week is celebrated on the first week of October in parallel with UN World Habitat Day. The theme for this year is Housing for All, a Better Urban Future. By choosing a different theme each year, International Union of Architects seeks to draw the attention of professionals as well as the public to problems concerning cities and habitat. Every project has its own story, starts with a dream, touches lives, makes life easier. Different dreams, different perspectives, different needs. Delicacy in detail, wisdom from the past, and vision from the future. All of them form an integrity, and each story comes to life. We are very grateful to all the architects who are creating stories of living spaces where people live happily, healthy, and safely. In order to help them create new stories, we are offering glass consultancy. We handle the projects from design to the building's opening stage. Recommend them not only the right glass products according to climate and function of the building, but also some tips for optimum budgeting. At Şişecam Flat Glass, we have solutions for unlimited creativity of architects. We believe in creating value for architecture. We organize architectural events all around the world and try to share ideas and experiences with architects in every platform. One example of those global events are team meetings, which we started in 2014 with the participation of world-known architects. Sue Fujimoto, Winnie Baus, Dan Stubergart, Ma Song, Kim Herford Nielsen, and Patrick Shoemaker from Zaha Hadid architects were our guests. They shared their creative design approaches and their latest projects in order to inspire architects and architecture students. You may find their presentations and video of all events on our website or our YouTube account. Another meeting series is Share Events in Europe. We have been participating in Share Events since 2013, which aims to communicate, share and exchange values, know-how and examples of good practices between East and West European architects. We are inviting architects and architecture students to our factories to meet the amazing world of flat glass. Together with our R&D department, we are inviting architects to our R&D center based in Istanbul. We come together for brainstorming and workshops in order to shape the future of glass. Architects from all over the world visit our headquarters in Istanbul. We have an experience center that invites architects into an impressive journey and exploration towards the nature of glass itself. Together with architects, we visit our reference projects from land, sea, even sometimes from air, and share experiences on construction site. Of course, we are not forgetting to have a cultural tour with our guests. We are reaching the architects and design world with our digital publications too. Transparent Architecture is a digital bulletin and a website to inspire design with glass. It presents artistic productions, innovative uses, and the latest developments in glass technology and industry. Also, we have interviews with leading architects about how they design with glass and their vision about the future of the glass. Designing the Profile of the Future Architect is another publication that we have supported. More than 100 distinguished architects from Europe shared their manifestos in this publication. Last but not the least is our reference projects catalog that we have been publishing since 2015. You may check it on our website digitally, and I'm proud to announce 2020 publication is on the way. I would like to end up my presentation with a quote from architect Balkrishna Doshi, who has created his projects with a deep sense of responsibility and a desire to contribute to his country and its people through high quality and authentic architecture that is totally engaged with sustainability. Let's celebrate World Architecture Week together towards a better urban future. Thank you. In Şişecam Flat Glass, we have solution for all needs of the projects and unlimited creativity of architects. So please do not hesitate to ask any question to us, either in Q&A or through our email account.
Thank you, Isra. This was amazing. Like your presentation was bang on as always. I guess Abha has joined us. Welcome, Abha. Without any further ado, let me hand it over to our moderator, Mr. Vibhor Srivastava, for further proceedings.
Well. Thank you, Indrajit. Thank you, Ezra. Thank you. Very kind of you to end up with Mr. Doshi. I mean, I really love the way you concluded it. And what a panel to have today. It's absolutely fabulous to speak to all of you. And thank you for audience. You please keep multiplying. We love you. Stay with us. You'll enjoy the session as much as I'm going to do so. Architecture is all pervasive, from the homes we inhabit to the buildings we work out of, and from the museums that record our collective history to the revolutionary designs that are launching us into the future. Architecture forms an integral part of our lives. It may bind us to one another through its public utility, or sometimes divide us based on our individual interpretation of it. Yet, it's powerful, it's limitless, and its purpose is just as great. In that spirit, and in continuation of the celebration of World Architecture Day, which we observed on October 5th, we have come together to pay homage to the profession by way of discussion on its evolution, legacy, and future. And given the illustrious panel we have with us today, it is sure promises to be an interesting conversation. So ladies and gentlemen, once again, a very warm welcome to all of you, and what a great time to see such lovely panel, some incredible people here who are going to share their thoughts. And I'm going to straight away quickly come on to Nandini herself. Before we say, I think it's important that each of our panel actually show us some work by way they loved it. And Nandini, I just got a little intrigued reading your profile. You were a lawyer, a solicitor, and then a corporate lawyer. What made you jump into this world of design? Nandini, and then you can take from this question, then you can go to your presentation as well.
Good evening, Vibhor, and I'd like to thank the ITP group and yourself for inviting me to be a part of the panel today with all these wonderful people. The switch, I think it was within me always since I was a little girl to be creative. And within the legal field, you can be, but there are certainly limitations. And as my mother said, to answer the question quickly, instead of touching my nose like this, I kind of put my hand all the way around and reach. But Jeffrey Bava was a lawyer, and he actually became an architect in his early 30s. So there was always these role models, which I thought that you have to be passionate about what you do. So even though I flipped careers late, it's certainly exactly where I want to be.
No, wonderful.
If I may interject, I think half the time the way private practice works, we architects want to get a degree in law because of the kind of contractual problems they're facing.
I have to say, all the architects I've met are great lawyers. Great lawyers.
Yeah?
Oh yes. Great business minds. So yes, definitely.
No, no, very nice. So I think that's very well said, Nandini. Is that something that you would like to show to our audience if you have?
So I'll just share my screen.
Sure, sure. Go ahead, please.
I know this is just a quick, some quick thoughts based on celebrating architecture, evolution, legacy, and future. And I thought I would take some snippets of the various webinars and discussions and ideations we've had during this COVID period. So of course, SNK is our studio, and we've really worked all over India, and we've been very privileged to do so. So to celebrate World Architecture Day and Week, of course, I came across this amazing cover of Me magazine from the mid-70s, and it talked about the adventures of the architectress. And I thought that since our studio is led by two women, I thought this might be, a interesting way to celebrate for today. And on the right, you can see the faculty and students of the Women's School of Architecture and Planning program from 1975. So certainly women have always had a presence, but today it's really a celebration of architecture as a whole and celebrating what we do. So to look at these three aspects of the past, the present, and the future in the sense, I thought it was very interesting to look at this picture of the Bhabha Atomic Research Center from Trombay, and just the master planning of this in 1966, that architects at that time were responsible for the built landscape that really represented the nation and its people. So right from the beginning, here we were entrenched in building back the nation. And this was another image I absolutely loved, taken circa 1958, of really the strength of our people, of our labor, certainly such an important part of our profession. And it is the strength of our people that have given rise to some of the most amazing structures that we have today in India. This is some of the early brochures from our company, SNK. And in those days, even the brochures had to be hand-drawn. So you can see there's the office, the little office with which was at the back of a building with two people. And, you had certain photographs, but everything else was sketched or printed on paper. So just the importance of that time that we must continue to remember. In the present, we certainly live in a reality where technology reigns supreme. We have a very virtual design process. We do still use sketching and scale models, but of course there's BIM, and that controls and is able to deliver very efficiently to our clients and for our projects. And so we work on a virtual scale as well as a real scale. These are both of our sites which are based in Mumbai. And these are the exciting times where we go and visit and really get into the actual world from the virtual world and see how things rise up from the ground. So the present, what has the present forced upon us? It's forced upon us a pause. And I believe it has given rise to what is called tabula rasa, which is allowing us to start fresh, to start with a blank slate. So what COVID has done is we have the advantage of looking at our past and learning from the environment. But if we start with a blank slate, what do we take from there and how do we move forward? So if you take just one example of a workplace, on the left, you can see how it started centuries ago, the monk all by himself in his small quarters working. And then we moved to the factory, the lines of factories and factory industrialization. And then you went on to the high open plan scenarios, which happened in America and Europe. And then technology came in with the computers, and you then developed cubicles. And now we're back to open plan in a sense. So there's been almost this circular range if you just look at one typology of architecture of the workplace. So is this what the future of the workplace is? And many of us sitting in our own spaces today that is so isolated and so tech generated, that will this be the future of it all, is what we have to question. So we always tend to go back with what we are familiar with. Our motto at SNK is to live, love, and learn. This is our studio on top during COVID time. We managed to stay working throughout. We consider ourselves an SNK family. We love to travel. I miss traveling now that we're able to do it again and back to our sites, the sites that we enjoy being a part of, and working with a team. So these are all things that we can't do just independently sitting in that pod. And this is how we've gone back to work. Both of us, Ms. Sumaya and I, heading back to the sites. And I love referencing Star Wars. So on the right, you can see us in our full Darth Vader masks and, asking, are you my mommy? So we always have that aspect. So I end with my son in his favorite space, which is this house. And I would just like to say, may the force be with you all, with us all.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Brilliant, Nandini. Absolutely. You really took us to 1958 and to the present, how things will look and evolve. But thanks for sharing those very nice slides. And I think everybody and the audience also loved it. Let me very quickly go to Mr. Sangeet Sharma. Sangeet obviously comes from a city and a great legacy of architecture. His dad, I've had the opportunity to meet one-on-one and the complete family. And, he's done some amazing work, and we would love to hear as much as our audience. What do you think? And couple of slides like how Nandini shown about your work, and the opening comments to be more precise. Mr. Sharma.
Thanks, Vibhor, and thank you, the eminent panel. I told Vibhor I'm not fit for this eminent panel, but he insisted, so I'm here, guys. And
he's very modest, huh? Let me tell you, guys. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And it's an amazing concept, Vibhor. You bring in the fraternity together, and we are celebrating architecture. So I think it's wonderful. I'll quickly share my presentation, and 29 years into practice, and it's a very, very appropriate title which Vibhor and ITP has made: Evolution, Legacy, and Future. I'm sure Nandini can vouch for the pressures we have on our mind when we have this kind of legacy. I remember a story in school when I used to do a good design. They said, you must have asked your father. And when I did a bad design, they said, oh my goodness, you're son of so-and-so and you've done a bloody bad design. So you get cut on both the sides, and it was a big pressure. So we have to work 20 hours more in a day to keep that thing on. I belong to Chandigarh, and when I say Chandigarh, I mean it's global. The whole mystery of the city is global, and we are proud. We are proud citizens of India, because I think the modern movement started here. We have Corbusier, we have Louis Kahn, we have Otto Koenigsberger. We have all those great modernists who actually work, Lutyens in India. So I believe that evolution, particularly on the Indian soil, started here, and we have lots to gather. So when you talk of legacy, it's something what we learn. And 29 years into practice, and so we are into understanding what we got, what we received, and how we implement. I must tell you, my dad is 89 years old and still working. And while I'm giving a webinar here, he's doing some designs. And last year, he won a competition in Bhopal. So that breed of architects, I'm afraid will no longer exist. That's the kind of a community like Mr. Doshi, Mr. Korea, and our parents. There's something very different in them, and that's what they inherited. So we are one step ahead because we got from them a lot to learn. So this slides, friends, is something which is by Corbusier, and that the center is what my father, S.D. Sharma, he gathered, implemented, learned from the masters, and the third one is mine. Not very proud to say that I'm following the same pattern, but I'm definitely following the same principles of design. Each one of us is an artist, and I believe that each one of us have got a sincere artistic ability which is our own, and I think that we need to follow. So what we what we take away from these people, these maestros, maybe in architecture, music, painting, poetry, is the values of the discipline. Is what we gather is, and what we establishes the values of human being. In Chandigarh, we learned, Corbusier said that I am working for the human comfort. And in the all means, we decided that while he was working for human comfort, he also worked for human dignity, identity, that scale in which you are inspired. And that's what we learned, and we experience it every day. Mr. Doshi used to come to Chandigarh a few years ago when he was pretty well. And I used to take him to this capital complex, and he used to ask him, "Uncle, kya uncle? Wahi har saal, wahi hum jaate hain, kya karte hain?" He says, "I'm learning architecture." At the age of 80, he's saying, "I'm learning architecture." He said the vibes in the capital complex is so strong that he wants to rekindle himself in terms of learning architecture. Today, I realize he was right. So when I take my students there, I'm saying, my goodness, I'm learning architecture. So this, and the center is the Museum of Evolution, which my father designed. And this is the kind of project in Jalandhar. So the materiality, the continuity of values, the continuity of establishing a human dignity is so wonderful. And there it is. So the form.
Mr. Sharma, sorry to interrupt. Can you please put these on slide share mode, and like for better visibility?
Is it okay?
Yeah, that's perfect now.
So on the extreme left is the assembly building of Corbusier, and in the center is the PGI hospital, then my father. On the right is the hostel block in Jalandhar. So I think the patterns is something which we grew up. There's something which we have been seeing our father sharpen those pencils and make those blueprints come alive. So that imprint is there. And I'm not saying that we are the ones who are lucky ones. We see that from our teachers. We learn that in schools. We learn that in colleges. And we are blessed to have such fantastic teachers in architecture. And I really believe that teachers of architecture are to be revered, not to be respected. They are to be revered. How can you teach somebody to design? So the continuity follows. Maybe I believe that, we believe in science, we believe in expression. So that's my dad with Jean Leray, Corbusier. That's me with my father. We won the same on the same platform. We won some competitions, so I feel very proud. But the problem with this fraternity, this generation of architects is the moment you feel that you are at level, they raise one level above after winning some competition or some award, so we can never match them. Right, Nandini, isn't it? So, I'm very proud to say that Abha Narayan was part to re-establish and conserve our capital complex. So we have some amazing takeaways from the past. And I'm partial to Chandigarh because I work here. So when I say the city of Corbusier, I mean global. The impact, the evolution is global. And that's what we are talking about.
Thank you very much. I think, indeed. And I love the words dignity of human being and values and materiality all have to, go in hand and sync. And that's the kind of sensitivity as a designer one should have and imbibe in the others as well going forward. And let me bring in Abha. Abha, would you unmute your mic, please? I'm sorry, you can have your sip of coffee or tea. That wasn't the intent to take you off the guard, but Architect Sangeet Sharma ji left you on something that you've done very great stuff in terms of, his buildings in Chandigarh. And people in the audience, Abha needs no introduction, but I still want to say that she's been among the top 20 women architects globally in 2016. So congratulations, Abha. I mean, definitely, most certainly. And we would like to hear from you because you've been really at the helm of affairs when it comes to maintaining the legacy and the heritage. Abha, all you, and in terms of your slides as well.
Thank you. I'll share my screen. I think what we're really talking about is looking at the entire perspective of architecture in India as we see it today, and with a kind of a hindsight and a view towards the past and looking forward. So I can now, say that in the last 25 years of my work as an architect, it's been an absolute privilege that we've actually worked across India. And if you see the map, I don't think we've left any little village in some remote district from Madhya Pradesh to Karnataka, and it's been an absolute joy to have worked with some of the finest architectural monuments and buildings across the country. So therefore, when we normally talk of restoration, there's this a very limited idea that conservation is only about looking at monuments. But in our practice, yes, we do work with monuments, but sometimes they bring a whole different sets of ideologies and timelines. For example, we recently won the Best Restoration Project Award from HUDCO for the Moorish Mosque. And there it was not just about restoring a mosque, which is the only sort of Moroccan styled mosque in India, but it's actually comes with a very, very painful history of partition of Punjab in independence, and how we had a complete loss of communities. So how entire because of the populations moving across, how one person's legacy no longer means anything to the other, and therefore those sort of fall into disrepair. So very often conservation is also about rebuilding identities and rebuilding and looking at a much larger aspect of how, as architects, we affect society on the whole. We affect the whole concept of democracy, secularism, and at the same time an identity that a community has. And that is what I find so exciting about our role as architects, because we can't just limit ourselves to walls and in structures, because I think we have a much greater role in society. It's not by default that a great politician is called the architect of a nation. It's because an architect is the one professional who's supposed to have a larger worldview, who's able to balance art, architecture, engineering, practicality, as well as an idealism. And I think that's the reason we all join architecture, because we feel that we in some way we have a dream of enriching the world. So another such project has been the Knesset Eliyahu Synagogue, which is a Jewish community synagogue, which again, the numbers had dwindled so much that there was nobody looking at it. So very often as an architect, you're not just restoring a building, but you're restoring a community's faith or an identity in being an Indian. And then again, what buildings or architecture mean to all of us in terms of our historic legacy. The Chowmahalla Palace, which I worked with Rahul Mehrotra on, we spent 8 years working on this palace, and piece by piece, a building that was, a whole complex that had once been the center of pomp and opulence. And what do you do when you have these disenfranchised royal families who are left with these huge buildings and then are put to no use? So very often it's as important to work a sustainable plan of what will that building after conservation do? Will it be a cultural magnet that draws in people from across and becomes a cultural incubator for school children to come to learn about their city? Or in the case of this project that we did, this is an old palace in Bharatpur, which is in a very small town in Rajasthan, not one of the fancy towns. And we had a very small budget. This was a government of Rajasthan project. But we worked and we said that we are going to bring an international level quality museum into this little town, because why should a rural population be always given a second-hand status? Or why do we think that they don't deserve any better? So why shouldn't the same level of lighting, of gallery design that we would do, say, at the Prince of Wales Museum in Mumbai, why should Bharatpur not deserve it? And I think that as architects, one is constantly engaging with this idea that why can't we push the envelope? And that has been a leitmotif in our practice, which is again it's a woman-led practice. But this, for example, is Bikaner House in Delhi, which was a bus adda. And I remember as a teenager, like growing up, and the whole concept of if you want to go to Jaipur, you go to Bikaner House and catch a bus from there. And there were pan-stained walls, and this was like any sarkari daftar. And we worked with the government to give it a new role. And today, Bikaner House has the most elegant soirees. There are various cultural evenings, there are book reviews, there are exhibitions, and it's transformed the whole idea of what we in our heads think of as sarkari. Because if we if we live with that concept that anything that belongs to the public is therefore sarkari and deserves no better, we are relegating some of the finest buildings in our country to a second, like a second-rate project. And why should we do that? So at every step, we have tried to push the envelope. Be it a library, for example, the Central Library is the library where the poorest of the poor can come in and read a book in Mumbai. And this is the library where a lot of children in Mumbai who live in small chawls and don't have even a room to themselves to be able to study for their board exam actually come here and sit quietly in a peaceful area just to be able to study for their board exams. So when we were working on this conservation, we said, why shouldn't we have a light? And if these structures were built with such magnificence, why should we relegate it to the kind of tube lights and purple paint that was happening for over 100 years because we thought that they deserved no better? But when the government said that under Public Works Department, we cannot bring you chandeliers, I actually went to the Rotary Club and said, each chandelier costs 6 lakhs. So can you get together and can one person each bid and say that we will donate a chandelier per member? And we finally got 9 chandeliers. So the point was, why should we always say that a great chandelier or a great volume should be for the rich? Why can't a poor child study in this environment, because he deserves to? And that has been I think, my thinking right through. And in the last 2 decades, we've tried to grapple with changing the idea of sarkari, with changing the idea of public, because that in our democracy is catering to the largest number of people. And one of our challenging projects was the headquarters of the Bombay Municipal Corporation, the BMC. And this is the largest municipal corporation in the country. This was a historic building, which was full of the typical either false ceilings or decaying rafters. And we took on the challenge of making this building a historic building by Friedrich William Stevens, the same architect who designed the Victoria Terminus building. And we said, why can't we give this building every state-of-the-art facility, from Wi-Fi to CCTV to smoke detectors, and at the same time make sure that there are no false ceiling, there are no dabbas for air conditioning, and give it the glory it deserves? Because when Friedrich William Stevens designed it for the municipal corporation, he designed it with 24 feet high floors. So why do we now think that nahi, ek municipality ka daftar bura hi hona chahiye? So I think as architects, we are responsible. The municipality doesn't tell you to design a bad dabba. We tell ourselves that it doesn't deserve it. So I think that value judgment needs to change. As architects, we have to say that a public project actually deserves my best effort because it's catering to a far greater number of people than a corporate office or a home interior. These are how we just sort of transformed open spaces. These used to be with small cubby holes, partitions, aluminum, framed, and we just removed all that and just merely exposed the Burma teak wood and removed the paint and stripped it off. And there are such amazing spaces in these buildings. A similar exercise was with the Opera House, which had been lying desolate for 20 years. And we said, why not bring it back, not just to a cinema hall, which shut down in the 80s, but actually back to the opera? Because doesn't the city of Mumbai deserve an opera house? Do we feel that, we are not deserving of an opera house, which in 1916 we were considered deserving of? And then we pushed the envelope a little bit and said, okay, people come to the opera house, but why not give them a great dining experience? And we added a little bar, and we added a jazz quarter, and we added a Parisian cafe. And this brings us together because very often what we tend to feel as a nation is that this is Purana. This has to be relegated to the old people or the school children who are brought to that site once a year on their annual school trip. The whole idea is we need to revive, revitalize, and engage with these spaces. And that's when, if 2 people have to meet up around that area and they say, hi, let's meet up for coffee at the Opera House, that will give this building a sustainability so that it doesn't have to wait for government funds and a private owner can actually restore his building. We then pushed the envelope a little more when in the city of Jaipur, there was an old pump house, which was a water pumping station during the Maharaja's time. And this was part of the revitalization of an entire Nala. And we took on the challenge of creating a cafe here. And we worked with old industrial and a structure that was just derelict, and we turned this into a pump house, museum and cafe. Or in the Viceregal Lodge in Shimla, we turned an old disused fire station into a cafe and a bookshop. We turned in Munnar, we looked at this old beautiful tea estate bungalow that had completely gone to seed and turned it into a little boutique hotel, which then could pay for the maintenance of this historic building. Or an automobile workshop unit in Fort, which was up for demolition, the Upadastra House, which in 2007 we turned into a very high-end boutique. But what it did to Kala Ghoda was that in the year 2007, when we removed these rolling shutters and put the folding wooden doors, because we saw that we saw folding doors as part of old shops in Girgaon and Baikala, and we said, let's just bring it back to this building. What it has done in the 15 years since we restored this building is the whole street has become cafes and boutiques and retail, and the whole area has become a happening place. And interestingly, everyone else has copied these folding doors and removed those horrible shutters, rolling shutters. So little interventions like this, actually, if we engage with the built fabric, considering most of our cities are beautifully historic cities, so we can't just always say that, no, we'll make a new building and we'll forget about all the other, the existing urban fabric. And that brings me to Chandigarh. Sangeeta, it was an absolute pleasure working with your father on the management plan for Corbusier's Capitol Complex. And it was a great honor, and it was Corbu's birthday yesterday, but it was an absolute honor to work on the management plan for the Capitol Complex. And again, looking at renewing and rethinking areas, we are presently working on this very challenging project for Crawford Market, where we are not only restoring the main historic building, but creating in the footprint of the larger complex, we have created for the city a 1 acre open space and underground parkings for loading, unloading, and managed to rehouse each and every retailer and shopkeeper and the meat market and the chicken market and the vegetable market, and giving them a hygienic and efficient building. So the idea is not that everything old has to be kept and turned into a museum. The point is, in cities, you have to constantly engage and interface with old, add to the new, and that brought us to a very exciting project, which was a straightforward urban transportation project in Jaipur. A few years ago, the underground metro line started. And like any metro line underground, there seems to be no reason for a conservation architect. But there was a huge hue and cry because the press said that all the buildings are going to start crumbling the moment the tunnel boring machine comes in. And we were brought in to look at an audit report. And then we realized that the roundabout of Choti Chopper was actually, we did an archaeological excavation. We found and discovered a step well and a kund that had been filled up and forgotten for 150 years. We not only changed the design of the metro station, brought it down, restored, put the kund back, but in the underground metro station, we created a 20,000 square foot sculpture gallery of sculptural artifacts, both that we found on site while digging this metro line and other sculptures with the government that were around. And then with that traction, we decided, let's use the tourism funds and light up the streets of Jaipur in the walled city, so that in a harsh, hot climate, we can allow people to walk and enjoy heritage walks through the night when it gets cooler. And this became a project that lit up all the streets of the walled city. And in a similar way, placemaking went on in Kota to create over a 70-acre site, a new complex for the Dashera Maidan, to give it back the identity that the Dashera had lost over the last 70 years, or engaging with, as the city anchor to Kanchipuram, to engage with urban infrastructure on how sewer lines, how paving in the city would be rethought, and how infrastructure works would be more respectful to the tradition of the temples around. So I'll stop here, but basically it's not we need to start thinking that as architects, we have to get out of our mental box and think that we're not just responsible for that one box that we build or what is inside that box, but really the larger urban context and how we engage with society at large.
Well, thank you, Abba. What a treat for everybody. I think audience would have loved it, and all of us. Amazing piece of work, and I mean, there is so much of history that you really made us go through, and what thought-provoking. I mean, as you rightly said, that the role is enriching the world is of an architect, and how look at spaces like revive, revitalize, and make the spaces engage, and don't make them stand on its own and desolate place for the oldies. I think the marrying of it, making the space becoming productive, and how it becomes convenient for everybody and stays tall and everybody likes it. I think fabulous, Abba, on that. And let me get my friend Dipen very quickly here. Dipen, could you please unmute your mic? Dipen, yeah. And Dipen, before I had a question for you, but I think would you have a slide to show? I mean, just like the other panelists are doing.
Yeah, I've made a small video.
Yeah, so Baroda is a beautiful city. I had the opportunity to head Indian Express for a couple of years in Baroda, so I love the city, and I think that city holds a lot of things, and very talented people do come out from that, and they have a great education learning in form of MS Maharaja Sayaji Rao University. Over to you, Dipen.
Thank you, ITP, first of all, to invite me for this fantastic panel. In fact, as Sangeet said, you are absolutely perfect, but I'm not. I was thinking I'm misfit, but I wanted to, meet all great minds of India, and that is what one of the incentive for me to join this panel. Nevertheless, the thing is that, the best part is that everyone's practice is very diversifying, and then everyone's work volume and the nature of practice and the expertise is very different, and that was the best part of this kind of panel and the discussion on such kind of platform. In fact, looking to Abba's presentation just now, and it is absolutely mesmerizing, and the best part is that why the public building should be like public building, or the kind of government houses should be in typical cream color, and that is where the smell of that government is keep coming. And that is what the best part is, to change the mindset, and that is what is really required. In fact, we are following your work since long, and then every time we are amazed to see how to deal with such kind of people. I mean, we have worked for a couple of project with government, and then we always feel that it is really difficult to even think about them, to talk with them. So it is a great, in fact, that is the kind of thing where Nandini's argument about the lawyer and then mindset to argue with such kind of people makes lots of difference. So nevertheless, it's nice to see every one of yours work. And what I wanted to share is few images, which is we have just made just before this conversation started. And this is what we have done, is what we are working on, the theory of Sahaj, or what we are working on, the theory of nature responsible architecture, or the buildings, or where we are running with the boutique kind of practice here. So as I've told you in architecture, that every diversification is needed, like the huge volumes, corporate works, public works, at the same time, the work which is absolutely soulful, or the kind of, for the niche market. And that is what we are working, and we have limitized our practice to, but that is what we are enjoying. And I think architecture or designing is all about its kind of enjoyment. So I'm going to share a few slides which we have done in terms of video. And I hope I'm not going to speak anything about it, but I'm sure that you would love it. This is what I wanted to display, how the nature is now taking over, and overall now more and more green space is covering up the structure. And that's what our target is, the interactive art, nothing doing, climatic responsive designs, and gradually over the period of time down, the nature is even more coming up over the nature, over the structure. And that is what we wanted to talk about, that how we can emerge with overall I mean, nature surrounding and everything. And gradually, the building is emerging with surrounding, though it is working with all respect and what all simplicity could work with. Music is not working. The interactive art where the playfulness is there, and how the things are now evolving with over the period of time, and the kind of work what we are focusing on, and many big or small projects, but we are looking forward to everything which is responsive for the climate, which is responsive for the nature, and it is kind of soulful and human-centric design. That's what we are focusing on.
Well, thank you, Dipen. Absolutely, very, profound words. I mean, everything that we contribute to the nature, give back to the nature, give back to the society. And I don't see Akshat here. Akshat, I don't know. Akshat is there? Yes, finally. So Akshat, I mean, coming to you now, and I know you straddle across a spectrum, and you have also the MEP and more in terms of computational design and technology. You embed everything to make the tactical experience and from the framework. I would like to hear your thoughts on that and your work, if you could show to our audience as well.
I established the studio in 2007 because I couldn't find an equal opportunities practice in India. So I've been a reluctant principal for the last 13 years, waiting for someone else to take over. But I was fortunate enough to find a nice place to establish a small atelier. And it's a quaint little, sort of blissful place in Delhi. We're surrounded by lush greens, and we grow our own food, vegetarian food in the studio, and we cook ourselves sometimes. We're a small 25 people atelier at the moment. One of our first projects was, a small hotel in the valley of Ranakpur, which was right next to Jain temples. And it started with a typical dialogue. Let's make something that looks traditional and such. But we were fortunate enough to be adjoining a reconstructed Haveli, and that made my life easy in an argument for a compositional contrast to the client. And that led us to Mana, where we started our experiments with dry construction, constructing in steel, sort of engineering electromechanical systems and whatnot, because I believe that the language of architecture has to evolve as its means and ends change. We went along, and we also started working on greenfield projects. So this was the first one where we, this is actually a caricature by Rod Hunt for the Bhartiya city. It's a 125-acre development in Bangalore, and it was started with a town hall, which is called the Discovery Center. So it was almost like a science museum for the residents of the city. So, well, it's a town hall in the guise, or it's a science museum in the guise of a town hall, and it's a completely prefabricated modular building that can be disassembled and reconstructed in about 8 months, and it pays off its carbon footprint in about 8 years, and it's now 8 years old. This is a project that's in the works. It's called the India Tower, and it's in Nariman Point in Mumbai. Don't worry, it hasn't broken ground yet, and we haven't demolished everything that's at that location yet. It's still in planning permission. We also did Make in India a few years ago when Prime Minister Modi came into power, and they wanted something to communicate the change in policy and the change in temperament from the Indian government. So over the years, we started working with, as we went along, we started working with more and more sort of affluent and influential clients. This is the first sort of multi-dwelling residential complex by East India Hotels, which is the Oberoi Hotels. And this is under construction in Delhi now. And such. So our studio, like Vibhor said, sort of stretches across domains, across typologies, and we I think we're sort of fairly diverse in that sense, that we like to work with emergent technologies and and innovative construction techniques for our greenfield works. But over the years, we realized that there are enough redundant structures or that can yet be preserved or adapted into something that's that's fairly contemplative or and can be restored. So I do believe that the next century is going to be that of preservation or regeneration. So this and the our first project to that effect was the the renovation and the reopening of the Chaurangi Wing at the Oberoi Grand Calcutta, which is almost a 200-year-old building. And we've done some things that some conservationists, but we used a lot of our computational experience in sort of redesigning the space. So a lot of what was the historical legacy and the proportion and material legacy of this building was sort of reassessed and interpreted in a new way to become to sort of give this hotel a new life. And this project sort of continues. It's an ongoing work. We've been working on it for the last 3 years, and I think it's going to take another 3 years before we're out of it. So our learning from these was that restoring something or sort of making something, giving something new life isn't as difficult as it's generally made out to be, at least in our books. And that led us to our first self-funded project, which began with cleaning up an old stepwell in Jodhpur, which was in the middle of the old city, and it was actually a dumping ground. It was nothing. About 200 or 300 trucks of garbage and a lot of sandblasting later, we sort of cleaned up the stepwell, and it became a regenerating aquifer, and it's become a sort of it's become the genesis for the JDH project, which is an urban regeneration project for the old city of Jodhpur, the entire space. And we started taking on renting smaller structures which were actually old and dilapidated, and started giving them new life, simply cleaning out like just decades of gunk and sort of giving them new function. So this is the tourist information center for the project in the garb of a cafe. So and our intent was that let's take what we can and make it fairly democratic. Also extending that approach to a new brand of hotels called the Postcard, which we sort of seeded with a young hotelier, and we started taking old villas in Goa and across the country, and started making small format hotels, which the first 3 were in Goa, and these are images of the first 3, which were in sort of different stages of dilapidation and whatnot. But it took us a couple of crores and 6 months to turn these around and sort of have them running up front. This villa itself I'm told is about 350 years old, and it has three chapels, it has 3 burials inside it, and it's term skipping me right now. And led us to a sort of modular prefab resort in down south near Udupi, and that's their first sort of greenfield project. Again, a fairly lightweight construction, which can be removed off the off the shore without any serious visible impact. We also delve in public spaces. So this is a performative arts pavilion in Bangalore, right opposite our Discovery Center project, and it's again completely prefabricated, just 3 or 4 sheets of metal that create space. And yes, I'm skipping through these. This is a temple. That was a temple that we were doing in Karnataka, again as something that came along during the pandemic, and a school, another commission that came through the pandemic. And I don't know why these two slides found their place here. But sort of doing these these self-funded projects also led us to create a small foundation called the Common Room Foundation out of an old grain market in Delhi, and it was a dilapidated factory shed, about 6,000 odd square feet, which we've restored and converted into a library and a mentoring space for young people. Anyone can walk in there. Anyone can attend the lectures and see the screenings and whatnot. And for about 500 rupees a month, you have access to all the, any and all kinds of mentoring that you need. And the foundation itself will reach out and make the right connections for you without any charge. Also through the pandemic, we started doing some speculative projects. The first week sort of churned out a commission for sort of non-invasive detection band for COVID patients or for people who are infected by COVID, and it would sort of be a early warning device, and which doesn't use your private data like the government app. It just works off a mesh network, of a cellular mesh network, and it's anonymous. And we've also been commissioned now by the Delhi government to start creating, shelter and healthcare facilities using post-industrial waste. So most obvious one is containers. Yeah, I think that's it. And so we've gone from, and while we continue to do greenfield projects, we also then do conservation work or sort of restoration or rehabilitation work in whichever way we know how to. We don't claim to be conservation architects, but most of those such projects are self-funded, because we do believe there's enough that's already been created for us to continue to make good of for the coming decades.
Thank you, Akshat. I think I love the concept of the common room and the way you're giving and making places available. And this is a great service you're doing. Hats off to you. Well done. And I love the way you dabble with technology, and then also what a right time to, in COVID, you getting, aligning yourself with the Delhi government and giving, places for to patients to take care, especially on the container. But I got very enamored on technology, and I wanted to come back to Nandini on that very quickly before we get to audience question. Nandini, very quick take on technology. How do you see technology advancements, rising awareness levels and changing perceptions impacting the future of design? Because I think technology per se is absolutely going to change the landscape that we are in, and it's already happening, especially during the COVID times, as we see, and the platforms that we are taking, some of them will really be the findings of the technology. There could have been no other solution. So what are your take in terms of how technology advancements you see, Nandini?
Well, I think just after Akshat's presentation, I think it's such a great fusion between what is cultural and what we have and technology. So I think we have to embrace technology. It's such an integral part of our lives in every way today. And it's really honestly kept us together during these times where we're so isolated. We often compare this coronavirus time to a war, when people were in war and they were all isolated in their homes, and how disconnected they must have been. But technology really has able to keep us together as we are today. So when it comes to architecture as well, it's so ingrained in the education system now. It's part of the entire syllabus and curriculum anywhere around the world. And that sense of balance to achieve how to balance out, your physicality of architectural work, which is what we're so passionate about, with the great things that technology can do. And technology is so vast. I mean, it's not just about parametrics, whether you're dealing in Grasshopper or Revit or Maya or Lumion. I mean, all of us are learning all these softwares and getting ingrained in them, but how it benefits even from data collection, what are we learning? What is technology able to do with, whether it's Google mapping. For us as architects, we're able to use it across so many facets of architecture, which is what makes it so interesting. In India, it's certainly grown a lot, and it continues to to work its way through. And it's also very important for clients when it comes to budgeting. It allows us to be so much more accurate today. And I think that's expected today. There's a certain sense of responsibility we have as architects to ensure that we're able to meet budgets, we're able to meet time constraints, etc. So if we're able to model an entire project quite accurately in a software, it allows for all these parameters to be met. But it's still a double-edged sword. I mean, one of my last images was us surrounded in this, kind of futuristic cube. And, architecture is a team sport. At the end of the day, you're not sitting alone in a cube doing it. It is very much about the community. It's about people. It's about being together. It's about ideation. It's about forums like this, and you can't break away from that aspect. So how do you meld? I think the future is going to be, how do you really meld those two aspects and be successful at creating the correct recipe for it?
I love your recipe. Let me just say very upfront. I think people, and especially a lot in the audience, I think what Nandi said, that you need to ready the way and bring it together. Don't get dwarfed with the technology. Use it more sensibly. And I think there are a lot of questions. Indrajit, can you show up? I'm really missing you now. Can I see you, Indrajit? Okay. Indrajit, are you there?
Oh,
there you
hi.
go. So could you make a little more interesting with the audience now? Over to you. Some questions.
I try to take one very interesting question. I try to take Raman live, and like if he is able to come live, or else I'll read out his question. Rohan, can we have Raman live?
Oh.
He's live, right?
Raman? Raman, can you hear us? Hello?
Raman, yes. I can hear you.
Hi.
I can hear you.
Okay, I love technology. I wanted to say I hate technology, but now I.
Raman, you can introduce yourself and ask your question. It's a very interesting one.
First of all, it's my proud privilege to be among such absolutely creative people. I'm a lighting designer by profession. I've been in the lighting industry for 40 years, spent about 29 years abroad. And I always felt Indian architects are by far ahead than anything else. That's why I posted the Tanjore temple as an example. Now, after seeing Abha's presentation and later on Akshat's, I'm really emotionally moved because he talked about the step wells. My daughter came after a long time to India, much reluctantly, and she went to the step wells and she produced a 3-minute video. She presented it on YouTube. It's absolutely stunning. That's what I want to talk about. But coming back to subject of lighting, I saw the images having colored lights. Now, I want to ask all the architects, especially when they do facade lighting, how does color impact, especially in Rajasthan, where the architectural facades are themselves colorful? Doesn't it distract? If it's a dynamic lighting, it definitely is a distraction, in my opinion. But if it's constant, it's great if you highlight certain portions. I need an opinion from the architect's concerned, because I get a lot of distraction here when I see a lot of installations. But the installation you guys showed was absolutely stunning. That's all I want to say.
So who do we pose this question? Abha, would you like to take it? Akshat, would you like to take it, or both of you would like to make comments?
Well, in Jaipur, we used, like the color temperatures were very, very carefully calibrated, and we had Lucent Worldwide as our partners. And Sarvdeep Basur and his team did a phenomenal job of making the color temperature specifically suited to the color of the pink stucco. And I'm very happy with the quality of lighting design.
I saw some blue lights. That's what the question was about.
Okay.
No,
so,
I think you got some
blue highlights.
No, there were no blue highlights in our design.
Yeah.
Look at the images.
Akshat, do you want to make a comment on what the gentleman just said?
I think there is no one answer to, there is no one sweeping statement. As long as technology does or any one such thing doesn't take over a space, it's all right. So you have to just be, you have to take each case for what it is.
True.
and be sort of as long as you arrive at a design solution that's elegant and sort of and simplistic enough, and you're all right. Personally, I tend to prefer working with two different colors of warm whites, and they generally hover between 2700 and 3000 K on projects, and then those are also then tempered with what is the color and the texture of the surface that you're trying to light, or the space that you're trying to light. And so there isn't just one response that you can give. It's sort of dangerous. Are you, what are you really doing with that light? Are you washing a surface, or are you grazing a surface, or are you actually using that as some sort of a task light for something, like to perform a particular function? But yeah, I'm definitely not one for, technicolor lighting on buildings. Definitely not traditional buildings.
Thank you, Akshat. Indrajit, can we have the next one? Yeah.
Yes, thanks, Raman. In case you were answered. This one is, why don't we see iconic class buildings in India compared to elsewhere? India too is a home to heritage architecture.
Can you repeat that question, please?
Why don't we see iconic class buildings in India compared to elsewhere in the world? India too is a home to heritage architecture.
So I see heritage, so obviously Abha is there, but Sangeet Sahab, Dipen,
if I attempt to answer the question, I would say that if Shah Jahan had to give the project to L1 tenderer, we would have not had Taj Mahal looking like what it does today. And if we had to go by CPWD schedule of rates, Taj Mahal would not have survived 400 years. So I think that's the problem with our system. And that's what we've been trying to push, that it's not the privileged that need to have the best quality of design, it's the public structures that need to have the best quality of design and construction.
This is the perfect answer given, absolutely perfect answer.
Yeah. And somebody in the audience said yes. So, Indeed, can we have the next one, please?
Yeah, Kuntal Shah says, excellent presentations and insightful session. Any say on affordable buildings, housing, and urban greening? In the field, we cannot see them taking place together.
Wait, said I just want another time. Just to say that again. This question.
He wants to ask about affordable housing and like urban greening. Like, can it go hand in hand?
Okay.
And why is it not happening in India?
Okay, I will take the inputs from Sangeet Saab and Nandini on this. Mr. Sangeet Sharma, would you like to make comments on this one?
I think Nandini will answer this first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ladies first. All right.
I think there has to be public-private partnership. And, cities need this. As architects, we're all willing to give our time. We're all willing to collaborate with the government, with public bodies, to come up with solutions for our cities. We're passionate about our cities. We had come up with the Mumbai Esplanade project, where we were connecting all the Maidans in South Mumbai and creating an additional 150 acres of green land. And it was so important because when people spill out of the railway stations, they're onto the roads, and we're back to prioritizing cars and transportation, where the need of the day is really to pedestrianize the heart of our cities. So there is no doubt there are so many solutions. We see architects across the board, firms of all scales coming up with good solutions. And it's just a question of collaboration. As far as affordable housing goes, look at the story of Dharavi. It never ends. I think, again, you have great solutions that have come out of the architectural fraternity that have been pitched to the government, but there is no movement on this front. And it comes back to Abha's point of, are we going back to L1 and are we going back to tendering and CPWD rates? I mean, if that's the story, we're just on a continuous cycle of self-destruction. So I think it has to be a point of collaboration. I think everybody here would be happy and give so much of their time through foundations, through our personal work to our cities. So to me, those are the two ways. Sangeet?
Yeah, I think it's the political will, Vibhor and Nandini, which matters. I mean, I'm again talking about Chandigarh. 60 years ago, we had one man whose vision was implemented by Corbusier. Now, that's a city which we have. And I must tell you that we have a live, beautiful model. The neighbors couldn't copy that. I mean, we have Mohali, we have Panchkula. It's not as good as this. I mean, I'm not expecting the whole country or the world to emulate that. We have a model which could not be copied in the very neighborhood. So the bureaucracy, the political will, as Abha also says, this is always hampering growth. The talk of housing, which the person asked this question, I think we have 100,000 great examples. As Nandini, you also said that we have such fantastic projects being displayed every day by young architects. And we have that one, I think the terrace housing we have in Chandigarh. The starting point of housing was in Chandigarh because people couldn't afford air conditions. So we had terrace housings where people would sleep outside. I mean, conditions in deep West and North India are very different. And so the whole psychology of the human being plays. Climatology, of course, plays, but I think it's the psychology which plays a role. And the political will is the bomb over it. If it is there, you get the best creative out. If it's not, it gets squeezed.
All right. So I think political heavyweights, are needed. Dipin, what's your view? Because Baroda is doing a lot of work on these lines, and affordable housing seems to be the mantra and the only mantra from the political angle as well. And moreover, even Shobha Developers, which is one of the finest developers I have come across, and I've stayed with them in Bangalore, they too have also moved into affordable housing. Dipin, what do you see in this sense? I mean, Nandini said there should be public-private. Sangeet says that there should be a political will. These government machinery, the heavyweights have to, come up and do this and take the interest. And at the architect level, especially the beautiful city of Baroda, what do you see?
I believe we are mixing two things together. One is that affordable housing, which is absolutely need of the time, and because of the city like Baroda or me town city, where such kind of demand is huge because of the kind of people living here. So people are actually trying gently well, and they are trying to make that possible. At the same time, as you said in Bangalore, super developer who are actually making this net zero buildings and net zero development, which is actually making not only affordability, but it is the climatic responsive designs and the development what they are doing. Most important is that affordable housing is possible and people are making it. Unfortunately, somewhere or other in terms of affordability we are losing quality, and such kind of housing we have seen in very near history. Within 5, 7, 10 years they are getting deteriorating, and that is what one of the worst part is. So I think technologically we have to work out on the way that how we can make it possible in terms of sustainable affordable housing, because just by cutting corners we can't make affordable housing. We have to make affordable house with the technology so that we can actually save a lot of money with the sustainability of the project what we are making. And as far as the political will is concerned, I think the government, of course, that will is very important, because I give an example of Statue of Unity. Now, such kind of project in India is very much needed. There is a lot of debate which were going on. Such kind of projects are needed, but the way it has been executed, the way it has been forced to make it within 18 months, and it has happened. But if you can see the quality of work which happened is really, really pathetic. It is looking great from the pictures. It is looking great as far as overall development is concerned. But the quality what we have achieved, it requires very soon and very fast maintenance. So unfortunately, we are missing on such kind of parts. See, it is all glorifying kind of project. Such kind of project is actually needed because it has boost up the overall traveling and the tourist and the economy of Baroda and nearby cities, and lot of other development already started. And the visitors are, I think the maximum visitors they visited to Statue of Unity last year before pandemic. So the thing is good. Modi wanted to go with the smart city. The concept is good, but the implementation is not great. So I think the political wish and I read one question which came into question and answer, that shouldn't we, the architects, or they are needed in the overall management and the planning of the government body and in the panel. So I think it is most important, the qualified architect and the senior people. And there are a lot of systems like unfortunate part, one more part which I found is that architects in general or bigger projects are not greatly paid, and that is what also one of the practice where this all tendering system and low cost system and everything which comes into picture. And unfortunately the practice which awarded the projects, not always but I'm saying at many a time, they are based on the pricing, they are based on the influence, and that is what we are lacking with. I think there are a lot of changes is required, and we as a fraternity has to work out a lot on it. So this is what my take on overall scenario.
Thank you, Dipen. And I must tell you, for a moment, my PC crashed. I switched on to my mobile, and then this started working again. So I'm back. So I very, rushed up, and I just texted my team, Indijit and Mitali, listen, my PC shut down. But Indijit, sorry, go ahead. Should we have another question quickly? Otherwise, I have one last question to take the audience.
I have one for Esra.
Yeah.
Esra, do you see design of buildings changing or evolving post-COVID? And do you see usage of glass going up after this pandemic?
Thank you for these questions. The time during lockdown at home let us do rethink and change our priorities. The importance of good design became clear as our homes become a safe shelter during the crisis. Architects and other key players in the real estate industry now need to redefine the new normal and develop projects accordingly. After this experience, we are sure that our lifestyles will not be the same as previous. We must design our buildings taking into account possible future epidemics and develop epidemic prevention strategies. It's now a necessity to elevate urban densities and rediscuss and reorganize public spaces. The need for flexible solutions, I think, increased by this pandemic. So we will continue to make the sun part of our projects and attach importance to natural ventilation principles. Our designs must be integrated with qualified, airy, open or semi-open spaces. Glass allows us to see each other, talk to each other when we have the proper design for it. But also it's a barrier. It provides us social distancing perfectly. There are too many benefits of glass. It is hygienic, easy to clean, eco-friendly, and long-lasting. It has scratch, impact, and breakage resistance. Nowadays, we are getting used to see the glass separators in our lives more often. For example, in a fancy restaurant, in schools, in libraries, in supermarkets, hairdressers, for social distancing. The possibilities are clearly endless, and so are the solutions according to the proper design solutions. So I believe glass will find more place after this pandemic in architectural projects.
Thank you, Esra. This is from Parijat Naha. Wants to ask, when heritage buildings are taken over by hotel chains and when heritage buildings are taken over by hotel chains or utilized for other utilities, is structural integrity the first step towards renovation? In case if Abha wants to take it.
Well, the answer for any building, whether it's being used by a hotel chain or a museum, structural integrity would be the first step, because whether it's being used for any purpose, you want to make sure the building is at least standing and doesn't crash on someone. So yes, absolutely.
I will try to take one live question. Rohan, we have.
Hello. Yeah, can you hear me?
Hi, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Surinder, this side from Kingsman, India. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, you can hear.
Okay, so it's a very simple feeling I have. Like, I really respect all these architects. I feel they have the power to bring a change, because the design will actually start for everything. So, as an all architects and attendee is here, I just wanted to understand what change as a community we trying to bring in India as a collective level of global standards.
The question is little incoherent. I didn't understand. If you can please, if you can, somebody can interpret before. Dajit?
Hello?
Can you please say the question again and reframe the question?
Yeah. I believe that, there's the design has the power to bring a change. So
Yeah.
what change we trying to bring as a design fraternity?
So he's asking you that the design has the power to change.
Yeah.
And as a design fraternity, what are you doing? So you, gentleman needs to know, as a design fraternity, you be the spokesperson for them.
Yes, we as designers have a great responsibility, and designers have the power to bring in a change. In fact, the Mastros made sure how the world looks beautiful today because of them. I think we designers are trying our level best to create that microcosm society. It's too lavish and wrong on my part if we say that we designers are the messiahs of the society. It's not so. It's not so. We have that little small power to bring in a change of a in a very limited way. But the design matters because it brings in the change in the human living. It brings in the change in the human values. It brings in a change of a human comfort. And the way we provide a space, it affects him psychologically and physiologically. So I think any small space created by us, we responsible, us, it matters. And it matters to all human beings, because we are creating for others. We are creating habitable sculptures. We are not designing in 2D, we're designing in 3D. So I think we have the ability, but limited ability. But yes, we are responsible and we should be responsible.
Well, thank you, Sanjay. Very well said. I think the gentleman has really heard it loud and clear to you. And
thank you.
Mithali, would you take the last questions with the panel so that we can sum up?
Sure.
Yeah.
Just taking a cue from what Sangeet just said, I think designers have the power, but I think they can bring better change if L1 doesn't stand in the way. So that might help them a little bit. But no, on a serious note, I want to ask, we've obviously seen some lovely projects that all of you presented, and this really historic past that we have in India in terms of our architecture. And obviously, we're at a crossroads right now. We can go in two very different directions. Where do you see us going? What kind of future do you envision for India? And what will it take to take us to a better future? If I could start with Akshay.
Actually, I'm not sure what the future holds, but I think I think we have a responsibility to ensure whatever we do doesn't consume so much, so as the future generations don't have anything to work with. To that effect, I think it's about time that we started, we started ending the dystopic stories that we started writing and start talking about a more optimistic view on architecture as the old technocrats used to. So let's start making stuff that will be relevant for the next 50 years at least.
Right. That sounds great. Nandini, would you like to take over? What are your thoughts on this?
Sorry, as Akshat said, it's impossible to predict the future, but I think what we can hope for is, I think there's a certain amount of honesty, integrity, that now is emerging with most Indian architects. If you look at all the professions in India, when you go to a doctor, you never question his advice. Certainly when people came to me as a lawyer, there was no question. What I gave was what was respected and heard. Same I'm thinking with a chartered accountant. Why doesn't that hold good with an architect? The same amount of respect should be given to the profession, and the only way we can garner that is by each one of us playing a certain role of honesty, integrity, building with a certain sustainable mindset, and also ensuring we keep the community connected. So we're a country of over 1 billion people. We have the strength to do great things, and I think so many of us, after so many years, we find a whole generation that has returned to India. I think that's very important. There was such a long time where so many, there was draining away from this country, and now we find so many of us coming back here, and that is a sign in itself that we're coming home. We want to be an important part of building the country, and I think together and with collaborations, it's going to be extremely important for all of us to work together. And as my mother always taught me, she called something called the God of small projects. No project is too big or small. Take a small fountain that is outside on a pavement and do something about it. If you're hindered by the garbage disposal system that is affecting your neighborhood, do something about it. So if each one of us just took 1 or 2 projects that were, that kind of, irritated us or kind of got us going and tried to solve it, can you imagine the impact we could have?
Absolutely. Lovely. How lovely is that? Abha, would you like to take over?
I completely agree with Nandini. I think it's time that we all as a community realize that there's more to us than just being, paper pushers. And if we believe in, in an idea, we definitely can take it through. And I think it's taken us many years of giving up hope on Indian architects, because of bureaucracy or post-colonial sort of hangovers. But I think it's time for the Indian architectural community to have reached its level of maturity, that why should we look at international standards? Why can't we set the standards given our context? And I think this decade and the coming decade is where we should be pitching for that, to set our own standards of excellence that others can follow.
Absolutely. Being vocal for local. Yeah, I think Dipen, would you like to sort of add to that? Because yes, it is really, sort of time to be more proud of sort of the heritage that we come from and sort of embrace it and do more with it. I completely wholeheartedly agree with what the ladies just said. What is your view on this?
I believe that is what the best part and the conclusion is. So nothing more to add, but only thing is that what I've observed and experienced is that we as a designer also, many of us are, I think, degrading our practice. Many, I'm saying maybe more than 50%. And that is what one thing in terms of purely to survive and to compete within each other. And that is the catch where we are degrading our practice. And that is what we need to understand. We have to create a talk within the fraternity that what should be the right kind of fees and charges and how we should survive with the honest practice. That is the most transparent practice. I believe this is one topic where it should happen within the group and within the larger fraternity, because that is one area why we are not able to raise our voice. And because there are so many other people to do your work, whether they are competent or not, but just based on the price war. So I believe this is one area where we need to get together and we need to start talking about it.
Right. Sangeetji, would you agree that architecture does not get that sort of place as an industry, or that it's due as an industry? What Dipen just said, that it's, every architect sort of stands for his own practice, and there is no sort of benchmark set?
I can sum up all these agonies into 3 words. Public opinion, self-esteem, and courage. We have to build public opinion. We have to have self-esteem with courage. If these 3 things are not done, then I think our fraternity will always be average, so I am repeating: public opinion, self-esteem, and courage. That's all.
Wonderful. Wonderful. No, what lovely thoughts. And I think Vibhor, it's the perfect time to sort of conclude this wonderful session. We've got such wonderful opinions from everybody. Would you like to sort of sum up for all of us?
No, what do I say? I'm absolutely floored. I think Akshat said, stay relevant for next 50 years. And Nandini said, honesty, integrating, and respect to the profession. And so very right. When you go for an education or for a healthcare, you never ask. Absolutely, Nandini, you really hit on the nail. But why is that architects are being questioned? Certainly not. They are the finest community and finest minds, finest professionals. They are truly the nation builders. And lots of people who are studying overseas are coming back to the country because they see India as a ground to grow and to contribute and do enough. There is a lot to be done here. And Abha said, believe in the idea. And level of maturity. And what really I loved it, set your own goals. Why this country? There's some amazing minds, some amazing creative people right here on the screen, and many behind. I mean, we can set our own standards. Ezra, with no offense to Turkey, I love Istanbul. I keep frequenting. Your invite is always there. I will come with all my friends. Does not mean to say anything of that kind, but definitely coming back to the Indian design fraternity. They are super, super talented. They're incredible people. Trust me. Now that you've met and seen, and you hopefully, God willing, you will be here with us very soon. So, hands completely, I agree with you that we must create our own standards and do not look for the West, but create our own standard, because here is a mind of great creativity. We thrive on this, and then comes Dipen. I think, Dipen, you were very, very honest. And, I remembered holding a session discussing with some very eminent artists in Delhi, the price war. Till the time this community comes together and stays together and believes in the profession and the integrity and the honesty and work for each other, collaborate with each other, this price war, cutting wars will not happen, and there will never be, degradation of work. I mean, I think you should be proud, and I'm glad you said, Dipen, this, and we should have a discussion thread on sometime we will think, this gives me an idea, that why can't architects think unanimously? At the end of the day, you cut corners, it's not a great idea. And client is very discerning. He will, go after your blood. So Dipen, hands-on, be practical and honest, definitely. But above all, don't degrade the practice. And Sangeet, hands-on. And Sangeet Saab, आपने तो मतलब सारी चीजों को एक सुर में बांध दिया, मतलब कैसे बोलेंगे? Azra, for your pronunciation, just trying to talk in Hindi, that he just said in 3 very wisdom, powerful words. He said, public opinion, self-esteem, and courage. If that's the 3 pillars, which will make our architects, our designer friends, our design fraternity stand tall, smarter, and confident. Ladies and gentlemen, people within the audience, we really love you. All the people who ask questions, we really loved your questions. I hope you have been answered. In case you haven't been, we promise to get back to you. Please join me. Akshat, can I see you for a minute? Abha is also here. Wonderful. And this frame looks very good. Rohan, can we have a, kind of a picture of this frame for us as well? I want to say thanks from ITP, from my partner Ezra, who is such a tremendous professional and a great architect herself. And above all, she believes in truly a partnership. I have run out of count how many. It's all her work. It keeps us going, co-creating meaningful, credible, neutral platforms like this, which allows knowledge sharing at the highest level. Ladies and gentlemen, from Ezra, from ITP team, my team, everybody behind my team, thank you very much. Love the panel. We hope to see you soon again. Stay safe. God bless. Thank you. Namaste from all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.